Good morning, family and friends. Revelations 3 and 1 records these words, And unto the angel of the church in Sardis write, I know thy works, that thou hast a name that livest and art dead. Many of us place a whole lot of stock in our church, what denomination we are, where we go to church, how beautiful our sanctuary is, how well the choir sings, how affluent our membership is. And we think that equates to a live church, a church that is functioning as God would have us function. But we have to be careful here. To the church in Sardis, they write, I know thy works, that thou hast a name, that thou livest, but thou art dead. So suppose you opened your local newspaper to the obituary column and found that it not only carried a list of the deceased people, but it also carried a list of dead churches. Yes, dead churches. Churches that did not function in the way that God intended them to function. When we think of a live church, we think of a church with good music, a good choir director, a preacher who is charismatic, who is able to hoop and fill the pews and the coffers of the church. But a church that is alive enhances the lives of the people there within, that the message is not lost after the sermon or after the church service. In the country, they had a saying where people would come home and say, the preacher preached today. And someone said, well, what did he preach about? They say, I don't know, but he preached. That person is a member of a dead church, a church that is not fulfilling the needs of the people. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not condemning any church. What I'm saying is that the church is made up of many members. The church is made up of us, and we have to function in the life that God has given us to go ye into all the world and preach the gospel. The church, the place that should be a hospital, the church, a place that should be a respite for the weary. Your church was listed in the obituary section, and even worse, suppose you open your newspaper one morning to the column and found the name of your church, found your name. How would you react to the news that you were a member of a dead church? How would it make you feel to find that the church where you held membership for many years had been pronounced dead by the heavenly coroner whose name is Jesus the Christ? I know it sounds almost humorous, but there really is nothing funny about a dead church. And this far-fetched scenario actually unfolded in the life of one of the leading churches of Sardis, Asia Minor, around the year 90 AD. So suppose one Monday, after having experienced a Sabbath full of spirited worship and a full day of church-related events, the pastor went to his mailbox and found a letter from the Apostle John with the postmark, the Isle of Patmos. He opens the letter with great enthusiasm, thinking that John was inviting him to speak for some special and great program. But to his utter dismay, here is what the letter said. Dear pastor and members, I regret to inform you that your church has been listed in the obituary column. I have been commissioned by Jesus Christ to tell you that even though you have a prominent name and enjoy an enviable reputation of being a live church, in reality, you are dead. I imagine the pastor would stand by his mailbox in shock, call some key members together and tell them about John's letter. And after they came out of spiritual shock, you see, this would have been a bitter pill for them to swallow, for they considered themselves one of the top churches in Asia Minor. They were listed as who's who in religion. They had, their pastor was a televangelist. They were among the top 10 in contributions to missions and Christian education. The church was the standard by which other churches were judged. After all, they were the right now fire-baptized, Holy Ghost-filled, sanctified tabernacle, and no one could do church like they could do it. Let's look at the pretty picture they painted of themselves. They had a beautiful building located in a nice neighborhood, but no one in the neighborhood knew they existed. It was far removed from all the crime and the filth of the inner city. The sanctuary was the epitome of ecclesiastical splendor. The stained glass windows were picturesque and very costly. The chandeliers that hung from the dome-shaped ceilings were made of the most expensive crystal money could buy. The pews were softly cushioned, and the floors were expertly carpeted. On one side there stood a 9-foot Steinway piano, and the other side was a cathedral pipe organ. Behind the sanctuary there was a large educational center, well-equipped library, a lovely dining room, and a full-size gymnasium. The church was not only aesthetically pleasing, but it was well organized. There were classes for every age group. The music department boasted well-trained musicians, and the choir, they were second to none. Their choir rolls were the most beautiful of Sardis. The ministerial staff was the envy of every church in the state. Their deacons and elders were men of renown in the community with impeccable reputations. The Sabbath school, personal ministries, ushers, nurses, and every other organization in the church seemed to be in perfect functioning order. But yet the angel of the Lord declared they were dead. They were not living. Let us think about that. Are we getting what we need to get, or are we just doing church? Please don't get it twisted. I'm not talking about changing memberships. I'm not talking about changing denominations. I'm talking about what goes on within our churches by the church, and the church is us. It's not about the look. It's not about doing church. It's about doing the will of our Father which is in heaven. This is the autopsy of a dead church. And I'm not just talking about the building. I'm talking about us, the church. May God bless and keep you is our prayer. And as always, should you have any questions, please feel free to inbox me.